Okay, we're gonna adjourn the meeting. Please, I'm stuck on the last meeting. We're going to commence the meeting here. Please rise for the pledge to the flag.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As you can see, Mr. Rowe is not here tonight, so I will be the maitre d' for the night. Just waiting for the sign-in sheet. Actually, is Mr. Hackney here? Doesn't look like it. All right, so when we get the sign-in sheet, we'll start with public comment. Mike Eschbach, you're first up.
Did we just reiterate that it needs to begin the conference meeting? With the meetings now being recorded, it's imperative that there's all public comment listening to the microphone and name and addresses addressed. Just so everyone's aware.
Good evening, board. My name is Mike Eschbach. I live at 807 Cameron Street. Most nights, the only thing on my mind is the warehouse, but I want to start this meeting off positive. As everybody well knows, that our Governor Mifflin baseball team, the high school team, has won the state championship. First ever. There's great kids on that team that I've coached since T-ball, and I've known these kids, including my son. Like I said, since they're 3 feet high, these kids work hard. These kids are a great example and a great asset to this community. They work with the little kids in the little leagues. They always go down and give their time. I think it's time that we give something back to them. I'm asking the board to recognize them in some sort of fashion. I know in Reading, the mayor gives out keys to the city for, in fact, they gave them out for the Reading High State Championship basketball teams. I don't believe we have keys to the township, but I would hope that this team could be recognized with maybe a certificate, a day, anything that could be done for these kids. Like I said, they are an asset to this community, and moving forward, I hope you agree to it.
Didn't we do a certificate for a gentleman a couple months back from something with Penn State? I forget exactly what it was for.
Yes, what I would need, if the board would like to do something like that, I need a complete roster.
That can be made available, absolutely. Is there any chance that they could be awarded this certificate in person?
Whatever the board would wish. I've done various things. I've gone to the school. People have come in here to the board, to have the board present them. It's whatever the board would wish to do.
With the Legion season starting, would this be an issue for them to come here?
The Legion season goes early July. So I don't think it would conflict with the next meeting.
Next meeting is July 16th.
Okay, I would have to ask my son, the schedule, but they have Legion playoffs. And I'm pretty sure it's wrapped up by then. I will double check and let Gene know and get you some more information on that.
And ask if they would like to come here to get recognized, or, you know, what they have.
I can put a message out to the coach and somehow interact with him or have him interact with Gene. But I don't see why it couldn't be possible to either do it that way, because you can't do it at school because they're out. So the only possible way was to have to be able to do it right here.
I'm 100% behind Mr. Eschbach. Just please keep in mind that there's like 25 kids on that team.
Yeah, there is 25.
You're not gonna get them in here. Just a thought. So whatever you do, keep the numbers, because they're probably gonna want to bring them here.
Well, we have capacity of 80. So if you guys got here early, be the first 25 in this room, we'll start turning people away because we need to get the kids recognized. I 100% agree.
Do you know if the school is doing something, like maybe we could do some sort of joint thing, or if capacity is an issue
What
somewhere?
about community days? Is that an opportunity to recognize kids?
That would be fantastic amongst everybody in the community, so you wouldn't have to keep it to 80 people. Is there any, I mean,
All I can do is try to coordinate with GGML, but I can't speak for them because the community days is not run by the township, so.
but it is, I'm sorry, but it is in the township.
No, that is true, but I do not have the jurisdiction to tell them what to do with their programming. I can certainly approach them
Right.
and try to coordinate with them, and all I can do is let you know.
I can't imagine they're gonna say no, because I think they would be outlawed from ever coming here again. So,
I would ask Gene, I mean, possibly Mr. Eschbach as well, like, many of these kids don't just live in Cumru Township. There's Moton, there's Shillington, there's Kenner's. If we could, I mean, I'm sure we have contacts at all of the township, or the township, obviously, in the boroughs. I think we should get everybody in government and community involved in this and recognize all these kids from their hometowns.
that would be great, and I reiterate, you got the best player in the state that does live in the township. And you have the best pitcher in the state who lives within the school district. So this is quite a feat, yes, and they're both in 11th grade. So we got another year of great baseball coming to the government and family. And also, I'd like to thank Chief Madison and Chief Bean for allowing the mini parade we had through the township on Friday night, once we got back from Penn State. I know it was a little late, I'm sorry if the sirens woke anybody up. But the kids were so elated and so excited. If you could have seen them come off the bus, it was a great thing. So thank you again to both of you, appreciate it.
And call it an escort, please.
I'm sorry, escort.
Because there's a specific process for a parade on state road.
I understand, I'm sorry, I meant escort. If that covers everything for the base one, probably used up my 3 minutes, so. Thank you, everybody, and I appreciate your assistance in doing this.
Just to round that up, so are we leaving this with, Gina, are you gonna follow up with, community days to see if we can do something there? Is that where we're leaving this?
I'll follow up with GGML. Mike will follow up with the coach as far as getting me a roster. I think at the very least, it's very easy and appropriate for the township to produce certificates. The only question is the venue at which they might be presented. Would that be at community days? Would that be at your July 16th meeting? So that's I'm seeing lots of nodding heads here. Giving these kids recognition is not an issue. The only question is the venue at which it's presented.
Another thing, I think, to the bringing the boroughs in, is that something you could sort of just CC them on, like the managers on when you reach out to your DC and them?
Yeah, GGML.
GGML.
I will. I do not know what result that will bring.
I mean, I guess I would say, like, can we just produce the certificates and give all the boroughs an opportunity to just sign on as well, just to recognize the kids?
Certainly, probably, first, I'll get the roster. I'll contact the other municipalities and see how we can coordinate. It may take a little bit of running around to get that done. Probably hand carrying. It's because that way things don't get lost. And then in the meantime, talk to GDML about, is there something that can be incorporated into their schedule of activity?
Mike, I definitely was gonna say something, you beat me to the punch.
I know, I just, when we had spoke through email, it made it sound like we were just gonna, I totally took it the wrong way. It made it sound like, hey, I just want to congratulate the Mifflin, high school for doing what they did and then let it be done. I was hoping for a nice event like this, so my apologies.
No problem. I was gonna say something, but like I said, you beat me to the punch and they definitely need, because it's the first time Mifflin has ever won the state championship.
Yeah.
So it's something to be recognized. I fully agree.
Okay, so Glenn shaking his head, you don't want to talk?
I can't follow that, I'll tell you.
All right, Pat, you're up next. You, want to speak?
No.
All right, then, that's, anybody else, just to make sure? Okay, so we'll move on to the, ambulance report then. I think we have somebody here to present that.
Good evening, Mark Winterick with Power Direct. Chief Cosgrove was unable to make it tonight, so we asked me to fill in for him. I understand you guys have a copy of the reports. The 911 totals so far for the year are 4,646 calls, 826 for the month. Of those, 170 were in the township for the month, with a total of 1,077 year to date. And our average response time in the township is 8 minutes and 29 seconds. You guys have any questions?
Not a question, but I wanted to point out to the board that Mr. Wenrick is also one of your fire captains. He's a captain of the Cumru Township Fire Department and has been since 2009. So he does double duty and we appreciate your service.
I do have a quick question. I don't know if it's an answerable one. No, that's fine. I'm curious. I'm just curious, like, do you know, is there a trend you see when you say there's like 4,900 some calls, response time is 8 minutes, et cetera? Do you see that changing year over year, or I guess over the last several years? Is there, and if so, I guess, do you have any insight into like how it's changing a lot?
Not by a whole lot. We're pretty consistent, with obviously with a certain percentage either way, but year to year, it's pretty consistent. We're on pace for where we were last year as well, so.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the minutes. We have two sets of minutes to approve for April the 30th and May the 21st. Anyone have any questions or comments on those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Second.
Mr. Bador,
Yes.
Mr. Danell,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes,
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
The rearrangement of the seating threw me off a little there. Sorry.
Okay, moving along, treasurer report is up next.
I think you received my monthly report. I don't know if everyone had an opportunity to review it. One thing I would like you to notice is that our first quarter 2024 treatment payment to the city of Reading was exceptionally high. It's a lot of rain. So it's really important that we keep working on our sewer lines and doing everything that we need to do. I know Bob has everybody, they're out there, they're always doing TV and grouting. It is really, really, really important that we take care of this. And I'm looking forward to one day, maybe bypassing Kenhurst. That would be a really great thing to do. So I find that to be very, very important. Do you have any questions or concerns about my report?
Is that the only thing you'd say that was that unusual?
Yeah, I would think, that's really fine compared to last year at the same time.
Hey, you have to use the microphone.
Sorry, I would consider that really, really high, because last year for the same quarter, we paid $537,688. This year, $882,233. I find that to be exceptional. So I think that's a real issue and a real concern. So I think the more we can keep after things, the better things. will be. So I really commend the sewer department and everything everybody's doing. We need it done.
But Bob, I know you guys are working your tails off, so don't take this as any indictment. I'm just curious, that's like, I'm a computer guy, not a math guy, so what's that, like 60% increase over last year?
We've seen varies in the flow vary like that before. If you recall, starting in like mid-November, into late March, we were something like 14 inches high, not 14 inches of rain total, but 14 inches higher than normal. And we're not talking about the large thunderstorms like we have some summer days where it dumps 2 inches and goes away. We're talking long sustained. You get the groundwater table up, and in the winter, it's usually worse. There's no vegetation to drink up that extra moisture that's in the ground. So it tends to be worse, especially when it gets colder and the ground freezes, the I&I also goes up. So it's just perfect storm, if you will, for I&I. And we continue to work at that stuff. So.
Now, to be technically more accurate, every year there is an increase in the treatment rate. And the amount of that increase, the rate of that increase varies. So there is some increase in there, but I am the one who calculates that bill. And I will tell you, that was high. And what we're doing, we're continuing the TV and grouting, which is basically plugging up the cracks. We are continuing to replace sewer mains. Mr. McNichols in a little bit will talk about the Cedar Top Road sewer replacement project that is just about to begin, which is a big one. You may recall that a couple of years ago, we replaced 4,000 feet of main in High Boulevard, which was a big project and needed project, but it's constant. We focused on Point of Connection 8, which is the third of the system from where you're sitting now, going north, and then through up to where we meet with Kenhurst. We spent a lot of time on that system, which included the High Boulevard line. But now we have to spend a lot of time on Point of Connection 1, which is the Penwyn area, the Gogglersville area, all of that western side of the township. We need to address a lot of that. And part of that is the Cedar Top sewer replacement. But there's a lot of work that is constantly needing to be done. And some people might say, so what does it really matter that the lines are going to continue to leak? Where it saves us is one, regulations. We have to comply with regulations, but even more than that, the more rainwater that gets into the system, the more the treatment plant has to treat, and the higher our rates will be in future years because they know where that rainwater is coming from. So it saves us in the long run to continue to replace sewer mains and do all of this capital work. Thank you.
And as Peg said, we're paying for half of all of the I&I for Kenhurst Borough. Kenhurst Borough pays a flat rate, doesn't matter how wet it gets or how dry it gets. When it does get wet, we pay for half of all that extraneous flow. And that's why we're pushing so hard with this bypass project that we're working on. That will pay dividends later on.
Thank you.
Moving on to tax collector. Is that Eugene, any handle on that?
Yeah, unless the board has questions, there's not much to tell you. You can see that the collections have slowed, but the tax collector is still collecting a considerable amount of the regular real estate. We're getting a few more interims. That's for building permits and somebody makes an addition to their home that is assessed, and that's what the interims are about. Per capita will be going out at the same time as the school property tax bills at the end of the month. So you will see that now that per capita is 0, for the 2023 year, you'll see that again populated with more numbers in the next couple of months.
Okay, moving on to the police report.
Thank you. You also have my monthly report in your tablets. Just a couple points of interest, this last month and into this month. Although my report covers last month, sometimes things occur and I tell the board obviously that occurs. So some of these things occurred last month and also in the beginning of this month. We did have a few high profile, I shouldn't say high profile, but manpower intensive investigations that did occur within the last 3 weeks, two of which were death investigations. We've had a number of sexual assaults that have occurred. And the reason I bring that to your attention is when an incident like that does occur, detectives are called in usually because these things are never reported to us, unfortunately, during the day, Monday through Friday. It's usually during the overnight hours and on the weekends, which if anyone has a pet, they understand that because your pet never gets sick during the week. They always get sick on the weekend. You have to take it to the emergency vet, which enables them to tack on $300 extra, right? So, all of these investigations require detective call-ins. And I think they were getting back to me because I had a lieutenant out for the last 3 weeks. So I was the one getting these calls. So it was kind of brought me back to being woken up all the time. But so that if you do see a small spike in any kind of overtime, that's exactly where that comes from. It's uncontrolled. That being said, item B on my agenda is to accept the resignation of one of our officers, Officer Cooper. She was just recently married. Her maiden name is Officer Goida. You may recognize her from that name. She resigned from the department. She accepted a job on the federal level in law enforcement. So it wasn't a surprise. She did keep me up to date on her resignation. I think it's more of a formality that the board accepts because we're not getting her back. Unfortunately, she was an incredible officer. She did such a great job in the short period of time she was here. I think she was here a little bit less than 5 years. Quickly kind of gained the respect of all the officers and everyone in the community that was able to interact with her. So she's going to be missed incredibly, but she's on to bigger and better things and we can't hold back from that.
One question for the chief is, you mentioned that maybe higher demand in the last month, also losing an officer. Do you see that affecting like morale or effectiveness of our police force in any way?
No, I do not. That's a short answer. No, we plan for that succession planning. We obviously, like I said, the liaisons are in constant contact with them. And when we know someone's going to leave, preparing for that. The biggest challenge is, as I was just explaining a little bit ago, it's almost like a chess match because we can't hire somebody like in public works, who hires someone, puts them right off the street with a short amount of time. They have to go to the police academy. So we're looking at 8 months until they're realized, on the schedule. And as far as, institutional knowledge, yeah, that walks out the door, obviously. But we have so many great officers that when I leave, it's just, you're putting another butt in this chair. So that's kind of what we do with the PD. I shouldn't say that. You're going to have an incredible hole if I ever leave. It will never be filled.
Sounds like we can save some money.
I'll make the motion to accept the resignation of Officer Cooper with regret.
Seconded.
Mr. Backdoor,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on to the fire department.
Good evening, commissioners. You all should have my report on your tablet. That's letter A. Don't take any questions if you have any, but it's pretty forward. Now I'll move on to letter B. We finished up the civil service testing process, and item 1 under letter B is Civil service met, on Thursday, the 13th, I believe it was, to certify the list of candidates that made it through the written test, passed the CPAT, and passed the oral interview stage. And unfortunately, as luck would have it, candidate number one on that list, which should have been on your tablets, has accepted a position at another local fire department. So here again, we go from 11 to 10 real quick. So unfortunately, if he tested and scored like he did with us, there's a good reason why. It's just why missing beat us to the punch. So that being said, item 2 under there is we had budgeted for this year to run a cycle for civil service testing, to add 6 positions. And there was a mixed bag of things in that, but obviously at this point here, I'm gonna take what we can at this point because the group of people testing for this is getting smaller and smaller. And the years past, we have done a program where we send people to hack for either a 14-week or a 9-week program that gets them the basis of what they need, and then bring it back and continue training from this point. Similar to PD, training doesn't stop just after the academy. It continues from that point on. So at this point here, I don't know how I need to handle this. Kelsey can help me out with this motion, but I'm looking for a motion to start the process to offer conditional offers to number 2 through number 7, which should be, yes, 2 through 7. At this point in time, and like I said, it was budgeted. We were sort of on a tight timeline. The Hack Academy starts August 19th. And I believe 5 of those 6 need to attend the academy for EMT or EMT and fire. So that's what I'm looking for a motion on tonight so we can keep this process moving. The reason why we're sort of a little later, the CPAT schedule only ended May 30th, which was the last opportunity for any candidate to, pass the CPAT. And we held interviews the 2 nights before that. So once that day hit, we also knew who was going through this. Just for the public's record, we started out with 20 for the written test. Administered the written test, and we ended up with 15. And in the process of that, we had interviewed 13, and 2 didn't make it through the oral part, and 2 withdrew out of their 12. That's how we got to our 11 number, but all the 11 met the criteria to be on the list. So that's the motion I'm looking for this evening. I'll gladly take any questions if you haven't.
Chief, are these 6 additional firefighters? Are they replacement?
These are 6 additional to get us to a number of 12. Because we can't do our job by ourselves. And quite frankly, we don't have enough volunteers around to cover nighttime. We're lucky if we get an engine out at nighttime. But during the daytime, we're putting 3 people on the street. So there's some reciprocating efforts here from mutual aid. But the mutual aid around us isn't always guaranteed either. Actually, technically, to answer your question, it would be 4 new and 2 replacement because we had 2. And this is like a dog eat dog world right now. Because the city just advertised for firefighter EMT positions, absolutely no experience whatsoever. Green as the grass outside, walk in the door starting at $53,651 for an annual salary with no experience whatsoever. We were in that ballpark. Well, now the city just took us out of that ballpark. Our range was very good, but they've come up to our game now. But to answer your question, 2 technically are replacements because they left for other departments. Which I can't control. I've had discussions with Kelsey about this, and 4 are actually new to get us up to a total of 12. So we can get to a 24-hour rotation and coverage for the township, either on a 3 platoon or a 4 platoon system. And this is probably gonna continue. I'm hopefully I don't lose anyone else, but I can't control what happens down the road, because everyone around us is hiring also. Spring, Wyomissing, Western Berks, Muhlenberg, the city of Reading. They're your 5 big ones, and us. So, city of Reading obviously does an academy. Fortunately, the commissioners here in the past approved doing an academy, and I found it to be very beneficial. That's one thing we have over the others, and it's giving some of these people who have some of the criteria, the opportunity to get the things that they don't get, and the biggest one of that is EMT. And continue on with those things. So that's what I'm looking for. Any other questions? Hopefully I answered that after thinking about the numbers and people and who was here and who left. So that's what we're at right now. We're at a total of 6 right now. We're bringing us to a total of 12.
Sounds like you're just getting yourself to where you needed to be. So while it's additional, it is, you were kind of short before, is what my takeaway is from what you're saying.
Yes, we've been trying to build it up to get to where we can provide 24-hour coverage to the township. And that way the few volunteers we have also can still be involved, but we're going to put a truck on the street. Have more people to choose from too, to also bring in people for recall and so forth. Because we've done that in the past too, but obviously that takes time to get people here. And in that time frame, it could be anywhere from half hour to an hour sometimes to get people.
And I see a note that here that this is within your budget.
Yes, I believe so. Like I said, it was laid out in a couple different positions, which I was hopeful that this list has a couple people on that carry some qualifications that we'll move up the ladder relatively quick. But unfortunately, one of them ended at the bottom. The other one we just lost to Wyomissing. So we're continuing that track of training people and getting on board where we need to be. So we have the supervisor end of things on the platoons also. But yeah, we need people to make sure we have coverage here for the residents of the township.
I'm just curious, came to mind was, that it's unfortunate we lost what was our best candidate to. Great, what's great for one missing is unfortunate bad for us. Do you have any insight as to like what caused us to miss the ball there? Not that anybody did anything wrong, but is there any way we could prevent that from happening?
I don't know that we can prevent it, Andrew. I think the biggest thing is that for the people who test and go through this process that come in with the minimum requirements across the board, similar to what Chief Winchester talked about with police. Obviously, you have the police academy, so that's the mark. Here, you can get all of these criteria that we're expecting and we're looking for and everyone else is looking for. You can get in steps, which in turn equals what you would get in the academy. You just don't have the certificate that says, hey, I graduated from an accredited academy like HAC. Where the police do, we have those types of things. And the other big thing with, I think, that type of scenario is Wyomissing's on a 24-hour schedule. They're on a platoon rotation, which gives people a little bit better sense of you're here for 24 or you're off for 40, or you're here for 24 and you're off for 72. Versus coming in for 8 or coming in for 10 or coming in for 12. And as you do some of the schedules, you need more people. But I think schedule is a big one. And also it's an established program. They've been doing this a lot longer, and along with spring. And like I said earlier, Muhlenberg is getting into the game now. Western Berks has also been in it already. And that's another whole, can't even compare these as apples. There's just not even apples to oranges. This is more like fruit salad when I talked about all these different areas, because you have borough, class 2 township, you have a conglomeration of a bunch of townships and boroughs together with the other one. Obviously, you have the city, and then you have us, and Muhlenberg is also a township of the first class, but they're just getting their feet wet with this scenario. But it's all about timing too. Obviously, if we would have got to it prior to Wyomissing, maybe we would have had a chance. And the other thing is that was, the rumor was out there because we talk amongst each other and then you say, oh, this person, that person. But depending what happens with those, yeah, I got a very nice email from the young man saying, hey, please remove me from the process. I accepted the position elsewhere, which I already am aware, so. But yeah, I don't know how we avoid that. It's just like keeping people here, and Kelsey and I have talked about this. The late Mike Sedley and I had a conversation, like, we put people through all this training. We semi do it, I think, on the PD side too, but there's better reimbursements, I think, coming back for PD, and I want to speak for that, but. You quit making investments in people, but there's no real way to keep them here. Because in the long run, what's it cost if you have to turn around and basically sue a person for leaving early? What's that gonna cost us on the solicitor side or litigation side to
Sorry, Kelsey.
take care of? So, no offense, Kelsey, but. And those are pretty much, I think those are pretty much your words to me in our conversation. It was very. Like, you gotta weigh out your options here and hope that you will, obviously, the building and so forth. Getting to a schedule that is. Today seems to be more fitting, and you can do those schedules with less people. Than doing something like I wanna say the city schedule, which is 2 on, 2 days, 2 nights and 4. But you have to have enough people to do a rotation like that to substantially cover. So hopefully I answered that. I was disappointed as everyone else. I heard it the other day and I was like, here we go again. So yeah, the list went from 11 to 10 in a matter of a couple of days. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. I guess the one thing, sort of what was at the front of mind for me is like timing. Like, had we gotten an offer in 2 weeks ago, maybe we would have got our top candidate. And maybe this is a question for everyone. I don't think this probably uniquely applies to the fire department, but hypothetically, let's say we had our meeting on the first Tuesday of the month, and I know we can't change that now, but would that have been able to expedite the process for you to get a conditional offer out sooner and potentially be widened into the punch?
I guess the correct answer to that would have been yes, provided civil service had to meet also. So the 30th hit. That had all that stuff had to come together. That's why I had the oral interviews done prior to the 30th. That way there, everything could be tabulated, other than checking the box off that you pass CPAC. Civil service needs to meet, and they're all volunteers. Also, so you have to get the civil service board together to certify the list. Obviously, that would have to happen before it comes before this board. So would it help? Yes. Are there scenarios? But like, how many? What would constitute changing something to say, hey, we need to have a special meeting for X, Y, and Z? And how many? You know, when you don't do something like that, where does that put us in a legal standpoint? Because we didn't do it.
Now, I'm more thinking, just for the record, like not just an emergency meeting, something like that, but like next time we can open the book on potentially scheduling, just taking this situations like these into account. So like whatever, not that we want to disadvantage our neighbors, but whatever advantage our constituents and our township can have the best, I think we should do.
Well, I will jump in here. We have approached the city of Reading. Mr. Bill Miller was with me a couple of times when we approached the mayor. We would love to send our people to the Reading Fire Academy instead of sending them to Harrisburg. I would rather write a check for somebody in Berks County than somebody over there. But they have been unable to accommodate taking candidates from other municipalities. But I would still say that is a goal. I would love to keep our money in Berks County.
Why is that, Jane?
I have never received a sufficient explanation. Part of it, though, is that they run larger classes. They really only have one individual who runs the entire training program. And they also have paramedics rolled in there, which there are some issues with that type of certification. Unfortunately, we've never even been granted a meeting to meet with the fire chief and the training officer to really discuss this and see if there's anything that we could work out.
Before we lose any more candidates, I'd like to have authorization for conditional employments for candidates 2 through 7, since we lost number 1.
Second,
Mr. Donnell,
yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Backdoor.
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller,
Yes.
thank you.
Now that that's out of the way, real quick, Chief, sorry. Here, crumbling. Is this something, I'm curious, Gene mentioned perhaps it's an issue of like limited staffing on Reading's part, being able to get them in there. Do you see that as something that could maybe be addressed as like, they scratch our back, we scratch theirs? I don't know if that's like the right way to put it, but like, we could help lean in on the training and support the program?
He and I talked to the mayor twice. We're still waiting for him to get back to us. I'm not gonna stop the mayor on one side. I'm gonna go to Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson, right? Gotcha. Brian Gotcha.
Yeah.
The head of emergency service of Berks County.
I think to answer some of the steps of where you go. The city's been running their program for a long, long time, and it's all been internal, and it's also based off of how the city operates. Not speaking for them, we actually do, meaning the Cumru Township Fire Department does actually work relatively close with the training division and the academy when they run classes, because I've attended numerous classes. My staff has attended numerous classes. We've helped out with supplying some things when they've been out of equipment and so forth. It's more of a logistical thing because of how they teach the academy, and it's the way they've evolved the program, and their training officer he's still in the books here. He was also working for us part-time as our training officer, is running that program full-fledged right now. But they actually bought the old Albernia building that sits across Morgantown Road for the city offices, different training facilities and so forth. So I don't think it's something that's dead, but you're also seeing a change and a trend here in Berks County that you have more departments that are going over to career staff. And with that career staff, there's going to be more of a demand to run some of these things here. It's a matter of whether or not you want to bring people in. Partially, you do it with the academy, but when you're sending them to hack. You're sending them up there, they start a 14-week program with EMT. They're in the class, it's run semi-military, like their exercise, they have their physical fitness standards they have to follow. But it's everything, that 14-week period, you get all of that stuff back to back. Versus trying to hold classes here or there and having enough to support the classes. And EMT is one of the biggest ones. That is a huge undertaking to hold classes internally. Even though there's some groups that have started to do it, but we're seeing a change here countywide that there's more staffing being put on at different departments, and everybody's asking for different things. And some that can do it because they have established programs can go and say, hey, we just want to have people with all this. But that pool of people is shrinking that have all your certifications. And unless you're willing to send them or hire them under a provisional probationary type of thing, saying, all right, you get hired this day, you have 1 year to finish this class, and then you help schedule that class. Hopefully they can get in a class. That's the other thing, is some of these classes are not run all the time. But I think there's a potential to work there. It's having to figure out how it can be done to integrate both the county and the city's way of doing things. And I know from the countywide, we're talking about different things and how things are run, and I don't ever foresee everything being totally smooth. But when you go, I'll say go into the city, you're switching over and doing certain things the city way. You come out of the city, you're flipping over and doing the county way, and it's somewhat very confusing how it happens. But I think those talks can continue. Literally, we can throw a rock from the township line and hit the training site. So it's not like we're that far. We do already work together, happen to do the training officer very well. He's in a position where he's doing what he loves. And that program has grown because they're testing, they'll run a class. Like actually right now, the advertisement's out there for paramedic, which is paramedic non-firefighting. And then they have the firefighter EMT side of things, which will go through the full academy. But they're running classes back to back to back to back. So that's how much you're having a turnover there because people are getting old enough to retire. They go into the drop, they do the drop, and they sing it out. So I think it's the possibilities there. I just think we have to get the right year of the right people and work that way. And I think there's going to be some more interest growing here throughout the county to do this. Because I don't disagree. Going to hack is sort of a pain. We work with Central Penn College up there also to put the candidates up so they're not driving home every night. Because some days it's rigorous and quite frankly, the 10-minute drive is rough sometimes getting back to the college, campus and put your head in the pillow for a couple hours before you even start. Because it's very rigorous. Commissioner Bill Miller can tell you that. I had him down. And anyone, if we get these candidates that go down there, I will let people know when they're doing I want to say the interesting things. Because sitting in classroom, we're not going to drive down there and see people sit in classroom. I'll be glad to pack up a car. Let's go to Harrisburg for the day and spend a day there and watch what they go through from, morning till, from morning till end of day, depending what they are. Because some of them go late at night, burn sessions and so forth. So you get the night and day stuff. But I don't think the city thing is a dead thing. I think it's just a matter of getting the right gear of people and then working close together. But again, I agree with Gina. I'd rather keep money here in Berks County, but you also have to have the personnel to teach that. You have to have all the instructors and everything else that go along with it. And that's something I think HAC has because they're pulling from the big metro departments around them and they're teaching on the college campus too. So that's another varying factor. And so I could talk all night about this. So I'm just gonna, unless somebody else has another question, I think the simple answer is we can work on this. So, and move forward with that. So anything else on that subject before we move on? All right, well, thank you for that motion and vote. We will get that process started. I need to go with Chief Winchester on a couple things. Item C, fire station construction update. As much people would ask, there's a lot going on in the background. There's submittals being done, submittals being turned out, things are being ordered. As of right now, they're to be on site Friday the 21st for starting of ENS controls. And Monday, if all goes well, weather permitting, because now that we're having all this dry spell, I'm sure the moment we put a shovel in the ground out there, it's going to rain every day to start digging footers. So we're working through some of the, as they would say, the rocky road of the first month. But they usually don't come into projects like this where the site is site ready from an ENS standpoint where they only have to do a couple things. And then they can roll into, otherwise you would see dirt being moved, but we already have done that in phase one. So they want to get here and stay here. They don't want to have any delays. But I've been in contact with the general multiple times. And they said Friday is looking like ENS Friday this week. And then Monday next week, the 24th, 25th, they're looking to be digging footers. But they need rebar to do that for concrete. So I think once it gets started here, I'll try to keep everyone apprised of everything as we move forward. That's all I have to say for this evening, unless there's further questions.
Do they have a worst case scenario?
Well, the healthy contract, I believe is June of 2025, need to be substantially complete. So we're all, the clock's ticking, but some of the things we're ironing out now is taking time and not time, money, and materials. So I'd rather, if we find something that was missed or incorrect, that's corrected now on the front side. So we're not spending material money and time, more time and so forth, labor, stuff like that on the back end. That's what we're trying to avoid. But But things are being ordered, and like I said, those are the dates I have, that's the latest and greatest off the press, so. That's all I have for this evening, unless there's further questions.
Thank you. Okay, I saw Willie was here. Did Willie leave?
Still be right back.
Oh, there he is. Willie, we're up for, codes.
I think, yeah.
Willie can confirm anything if I relay it incorrectly, but you have the codes report in the agenda. I would also let you know that Mr. Frymore and Solicitor Frankowski have been working with the owners of the Philadelphia Avenue properties to follow up on the hearing that you had on April 18th. The owner of 717 is ready to do his demolition. The owners of 711 and 713 have received a certification from an engineer that those can be rehabbed. Mr. Frymore has asked for drawings of how they're going to do that. The difficulty is the owner of 715. And, the solicitor is going to step in and attempt to help us with that one. Because if they demolish and rebuild 717, 715 is only 14 feet wide. Now, we're talking very, very old units, obviously pre-existing non-conforming in terms of any standards for dimensions. The issue with that is if 717 is demolished and rebuilt and 711 and 713 are rehabbed, you've got this little sliver of land between them. There's no room to demolish and remove the material. So we really have to address 715 at or near the same time. And the solicitor is hopefully going to help us with that.
Yeah, my question for the board would be to consider whether the board would want to take this to the Court of Common Pleas and request a court order permitting the township to actually go in and demolish 715 while there's time, while 717 isn't there. So that there is room to demolish 715, because the concern is if 715 doesn't get demolished and 717 builds something on its lot, 715 may just sit there forever in a state of disrepair because no one can get in to actually have room enough to demo that structure. I don't think he has the money to.
Okay, that's what's going on here?
The
So they don't-
person- To address Mr. Miller's question, the person who purchased 715 is already over $15,000 in delinquent sewer fees to Cumru Township. I have no idea how they were able to manage to buy this property. And we, solicitor's office has filed liens against this owner who lives in another part of Cumru Township. So, they don't have the money. I have no idea how they got the money to buy the property. By rights, that money should have gone to the sewer department. But so I think we may need to consider something like what the solicitor is proposing.
Do we want to give them like a drop dead, basically, that you have to do X by Y, or we're gonna go to the court?
We certainly can. I don't know how much good that will do, because quite frankly, I don't think that even with the drop dead date, they're going to do anything at all. The owner has stated that he's, filing a lawsuit against the owner who sold him the property and all kinds of stuff. I think just trying to kind of create a mess so that the township kind of steps back and says, oh, litigation, we don't want to get involved. But I can certainly send them a notice saying, if this isn't demolished by X date, we're going to do it. The issue is we do have to work closely with Mr. Jankowski, who owns 717, because if he demos his property, we need to make sure that 715 gets demoed prior to him laying a foundation and everything to rebuild on 717. So that we have room enough to get in there and demolish 715.
Kelsey, I guess to Greg's point that I'm assuming we've had, or at least attempted to have
communication with the owner of 715?
We have, and Willie, I know Willie has too. Mr. Frymoyer's had conversations with the owner of 715 and quite frankly, no one's gotten anywhere.
I guess in that case, is it worth even giving, like, they're just unresponsive. Is it worth just going?
Legally, we do. So legally, if we decided to file a lawsuit, which would basically be a reverse injunction, basically asking the court to allow us to demolish the property. We absolutely would have to give them legal notice. I mean, they would have notice, they would have to appear in court. If they didn't appear, that would be their problem, but we would have to prove that we gave them notice of the court hearing and everything else. So yeah, we would absolutely have to follow that. The court would not issue an order without us proving that proper notice was given under the law.
Question, you're in the perfect spot. Yeah, the owner of 715 of all of the owners impacted here, have they been compliant with like the orders to like board up? And I guess what I'm getting at, not to beat around the bush, is like, if this person is just being completely unresponsive, uncooperative in all ways with this matter, like, should we just go ahead and go to the courts?
My understanding is that the owner of 717, as we discussed, is being cooperative. He's already got a demo date. It's probably gonna be next Thursday or Friday. He said to me today on the phone, actually.
Yeah.
The owner of 711 and 713 are moving forward. They think they can repair it. They've got an architect, so that's fine. They're making progress. But the owner of 715 hasn't even secured his property yet. There's still a door, to my understanding, hanging open in the back.
Yeah, it's not secured. I was at Mr. Cobb's house today because he installed a fence without a permit, and he also has a pool in his yard without a permit. I do have the permit upstairs, but we're holding it because he owes the township money under Act 90 of 2010. The township or any municipality cannot issue a permit if there's any kind of monies owed for sewer, refuge, or any kind of delinquent fees. So he has not got his permit for his pool. He told me his brother was going to secure it and cut the weeds. I'm like, I told you this before. I sent him a letter and nothing has been done.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone probably remembers, like, back whenever this was in March or February, I was pretty apprehensive about like township intervening in like a private matter, but it seems like at this point, this person is just like not taking the initiative or responsibility for the issue. So I'd say if you recommend we go to the court, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say what the court will or won't do. We can certainly attempt to get the court to order the demolition. Now, that being said, it would be the township contracting with a contractor to do the demolition and then us leaning the property based on the cost of that demolition. So it would be township funds.
Well, I think maybe we could get a hold of Mr. Yankowski's contractor who's tearing down his property and maybe probably do 15 at the same time. I mean, I don't know how the board or how that would come about.
Well, it depends because we do have to abide by bidding requirements
Okay,
and things
yeah.
like that for under the MPC stuff.
Okay.
So if we have to pay for this, do we get to recoup those funds in some way, shape or form?
We put a lien on the property, and if the property gets sold, then we are in a lien position to collect money at the sale of the property. Now, if there's a deficiency because of the sale, you know, things like that, not great. So it's not a guarantee that you recoup all of your money.
Yeah, Mr. Cobb was just upset that he paid $40,000 for a property he hadn't seen. So at the hearing, that's what he said. He bought it sight unseen, so, you know, and he owes the township all that money is.
Yeah, I don't
They're
think
not
he
doing
got a title. I don't think he got a title commitment or title work done. I think it was just a straight up deed transfer that he did no due diligence on whatsoever. So
Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't know how you miss it.
And there was never
And the other thing I'm gonna add,
there was never an escrow put on for the property.
yeah, this is again, we're running into this more frequently. Because the way the insurance companies also do some stuff. If the insurance companies wouldn't have money over right away, I know this is a touchy subject, but people get it wrong. And then this property slipped. I agree, but for aspect of it, for one aspect, But I can guarantee you unless 7-11, 7-13 will get their stuff together and you get plans, stamp plans, but how they're gonna do this. It's gonna be an interesting day to watch them take down 15 without 13 and 11 get compromised. And that's a concern I have from a township level. I want the eyesore to go away, number one, because of what happened there. But I still do not believe you're gonna take down one and see the other two without me compromising of 11 and 13. And then we're gonna be in that mess because we took the stance that let's take a step. Like I want it down more than anybody else. I'm tired of driving by it. Like some other properties, and I'm sure Willie's tired of seeing it too. It's just, but the way things are handled, and some things we can't control. But that's one of my concerns, just looking at this. Yeah.
I agree with you, chief, and I had a conversation with the owner of 717 about that too, Mr. Jankowski, and I said, how are you gonna take 717 down without 15 falling down, or at least causing more damage to it, and then having that liability on either you or your contractor? So that is another concern, yeah, and I'm sure it would need to be a concerted effort between 7-11, 7-13, and the township if that demolition order were to get issued by the court.
I think if you put it out for bid for the town to take 15 down, the contractor will be responsible for making sure that they shore up the wall for 13, that it doesn't come down because of the balloon frame, the way they're framed. That's just a concern that the contractor would be worried about.
Yeah, I think there need to be definitely a site visit for that one.
Is it, I mean, you kind of answered the question before you even asked it, chief. So is there a middle here somewhere? It sounds like if we go in there and just demolish it, there's literal and figurative shrapnel that could be caught by us and other parties involved here. Is there another way?
Yeah, but I think that ship has sailed. Meaning, the other way would have been the day of the fire. Everything ended up on a pile. But again, with the death, that tends to hold things up. And you also really don't want to disturb evidence for other investigators, meaning outside of what happens here at the township, insurance, friends and people, whatever they decide is something. But I think that ship has sailed, but you're right, there is some, I think, collateral damage that could happen either way here. I'm very surprised Mr. Jankowski and his contractor, so then we got hold about, we're gonna take this down. Cause I might just have to pull up a lawn chair that day and sit across the street and watch this because it's gonna be addressed.
Maybe we'll get lucky and 715 will just fall over.
Again, they're very old, really said balloon frame, like I said, I can't believe 11 or 13 is gonna do something, but then they were also the ones that called for the hearing that mortgaged it for like $110,000 or $130,000. So I'm still scratching my head going. They're physical properties, you could drive by and look at them, especially 15, because of their proximity to that location. So I don't necessarily feel bad for any partners involved with this plan, other than Mr. Jankowski, because he has a plan. But really can't execute his plan until he gets everyone else on board. But again, they've sold and sold and sold, and here we are at the state.
Yeah. It's the trouble for me is it just doesn't seem like we have a good answer.
There is no good answer. That unfortunately, this is one of those situations because a fatality occurred in the fire, it automatically became a state police investigation. And you can't just demolish it because it could have been evidence if it was a criminal fire. So we were stymied in that respect. And of course, that doesn't minimize the loss of life. And unfortunately, these units are so old that they're of this type of construction. And really, unfortunately, there was no way to prevent the owners from going ahead and selling them. That's the real tragedy. There were efforts by people to buy all 4 units, which would have been great, demolish them all and rebuild them under current codes. But the owners of 11 and 13 were on, yet they sold, and then these two others sold. It's really unfortunate how this has played out. I guess what we would need at this point is some kind of a feel from the board of whether you're willing to, enter into, something like the solicitor was saying about, petitioning the court for an order to demolish this unit or not. We just need to know what you're thinking.
Is that our least worst response?
I think there's a couple ways you can go. I mean, you can authorize me to petition the court to try to get an order to demolish this building, which would bring Mr. Kava, quite frankly, into court, and maybe there could be discussions on how we get this resolved at that point. In a better way, but if not, then we have a court order saying we can. We can wait and see how Mr. Jankowski's demolition of 717 goes and see what that looks like and how it affects 715, and then decide whether we want to pursue that court order. If we do nothing, the risk is that 715 sits there in the state it's in for as long until someone decides they found some kind of way to tear it down from whatever angle they can get in to tear it down from.
I'd like to make a motion that you put the court order in for possible demolition of 715.
I'll second.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Baddour,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
And I'm sure the solicitor will keep us apprised on how this goes.
I will, and I will need testimony at the hearing, most likely from Willie, maybe the chief, maybe even Eugene. So let me get my thoughts in order about how I would want to present that case, and I will be in touch.
Thank you.
Sort of like you alluded to, Kelsey, it's not necessarily the case that we have to demolish it, like it could bring him to negotiation and settlement.
Yeah, I had a situation in another township like this, after a flood event, and, did petition the court for the same thing, an emergency demo order. And the gentleman who owned the property showed up, and we came to an agreement, and he basically agreed that the township could demo it, and when he got the insurance money from his insurance carrier, he would pay it to the township to pay off the demo costs, and it worked out. I mean, the township got paid, the building got demoed, everything was safe and good. So there is a chance that it could work out that way, but just never really know in these situations.
And we're all good on administration?
No, I have, more for you. Hopefully not as lengthy a discussion. Item B, the municipal separate storm sewer system, also known lovingly as MS4 program. We got a letter from the DEP accepting our last report. And there was a notation on the letter that the DEP wants us to start working on an update to our stormwater ordinance to incorporate the 2022 DEP model ordinance. This will be a requirement in 2025. What I'm asking for this evening is an authorization to start working on that. This is one of those ordinances that is not authorize it 1 month, adopt it the next month. This is not that kind of ordinance. This will take time. We have 2 engineers who work with us on storm sewer administrative issues, Nick Johnson of Johnson Environmental, and one of Joe Rogoski's colleagues, Steve Hoffman of Great Valley Consultants. And it will require some coordination from them and then coordination with the solicitor. So this is not a short-term ordinance. I'm simply asking for authorization for us to begin working on that so that we can meet the 2025 deadline.
Move to authorize drafting the ordinance unless there's any.
I'll say,
Mr. Baddour,
yes.
Mr. Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item, the next item at the top of page 3, refuse and recycling pickup has been authorized to be delayed this week for an hour each day. or excuse me, authorized to be picked up earlier, an hour each day because of the excessive heat warnings. I will, take this opportunity to let the board know that next month, in July, the yard waste site will change. Now, if anyone has been out to our current yard waste site, soon to be former, all you have to do is go down the same road and there will be signs pointing to the right instead of the left. The township owns a piece of land out at Poplar Neck, and Public Works spearheaded, if you remember last meeting, I talked about Mr. Yost spearheading getting the permission from the DEP. They are currently working on setting that up with a proper entrance and everything that we need. I will say that there will be some expenses out of the refuse fund that will be unusual, not huge, but unusual, because at the time we did the budget last year, there was no way for us to know exactly how this was all going to play out. We did not have the DEP's approval at that time. Also, next to that yard waste site is going to be an alternate soil deposit site. It is not ready yet, but after the Cedar Top sewer replacement project, for the Cedar Top project, the soils from that project are being deposited at the Ashley Run site. And we're gonna smooth that out. And then future projects will be using the Poplar Neck site, but the Poplar Neck site isn't ready yet. We have the permit, but we have to set up ENS controls. There are things that Public Works has to do to get that site ready. So the Cedar Top project is going to use the Ashley Run soil deposit site. And any activity you see out there right now with pipe and whatnot, that pipe is actually going to be recycled. That pipe that you might see there in a dumpster is from the Montrose Boulevard Storm Sewer Project. They gather the pipe and then the contractor takes it for scrap, because that's all corrugated metal. That's really old and old-fashioned pipe. So, those are my, recent reports on refuse and recycling. In regard to planning, we have several items. The subdivision of lots 15 and 16 of Seven Springs. This is the easiest plan ever. It is 3 lots, 2 homes on one side and the other, a lot in between. They're taking the lot in between, they're chopping it in half and they're splitting it between the 2 of them. That's all this plan is about, is taking a lot and chopping it in half. Yes, we need a motion to approve waivers related to this. There was no new construction proposed by this. This is strictly a redistribution of land. So first we need, as you can see on your agenda, we need an approval of the waivers that are recommended by the Planning Commission for the various studies. It's also reiterating not requiring curb and sidewalk. There is no curb and sidewalk out in Seven Springs, and to not require new monument because rebar is proposed to be set at the one new lot corner. The other lot corners have markers.
So I'd like to make a motion. A waiver.
Second.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Backdoor,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. The next one is the Planning Commission recommends granting final approval to the minor subdivision plan for, even though it's an annexation on the 2 lots, it's still considered a subdivision of land. They subject to compliance with any outstanding comments in GBC's review letter, and of course, payment of their bills. I would need a motion for approval of that plan.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the plan.
I'll second
Mr. Bill Miller,
it. Yes.
Mr. Backdoor,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell.
I just might need to get caught up, so I'm just gonna abstain. I'm abstaining.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
The next plan is, Newcastle Lawn and Landscaping is one of the businesses out at East Point Drive. They purchased the one empty lot out at East Point, which is quite a large lot, and they would like to eventually submit a full land development plan, for different types of laydown areas as a landscaping concern. They need a laydown area for brush, a laydown area for stone. They do need one small building there, an office building. However, what they are requesting of the board this evening is, they call it phase one. Essentially, they want to take the northernmost sliver of the lot and put in a driveway and a storm basin for that driveway, in order for them to have a one-way circulation through their existing property. So, people and equipment going in by their existing property, doing whatever they need to do in the back of their property, and then coming out in a new driveway. They are calling that phase one. It's a very small portion of their, of the new property they've acquired. And they're asking for a waiver of land development for phase one, subject to the condition that they would submit a full land development plan, including all their holdings, for phase two. And the planning commission agreed with that request and are recommending that to the board of commissioners.
And why don't they want to do a plan for phase one?
Essentially what they're trying to do, and I concur with this goal, is get some of the cars and traffic situation alleviated out there. Right now, they've got a very narrow lot, and they have all of their people and equipment, and they have quite a number of employees going in and out of the one driveway. And that driveway is close to Right Now Our Trailers, which has 300 employees and quite a bit of activity. And they're trying to alleviate some of that congestion as quickly as possible, is essentially what they're trying to do.
Are we de facto agreeing to plan two by allowing them to proceed this way?
No, I don't believe so.
So I guess what I'm saying is, we're not cornering ourselves, like, by letting them go here, we're not basically saying, well, we're gonna have to approve it. So, yes, I understand the subject too, but you, in certain instances, if you approve phase one, you are de facto approving phase two as well, because they're attached at the hip. Is that correct?
No, in this situation, they would definitely need to submit a land development plan for phase two, the way it's laid out.
Actually, the driveway that they want to put in is straight and then connects to their current properties, but has no connection onto the rest of where they want the phase two. I believe this is of minimal risk, if you will, to the township.
I guess what I'm saying is, there's no interdependencies between phase one and phase two. They can be standalone projects.
Yes, you could reject phase two if you wish,
Okay,
at the time it comes in.
perfect, thank you.
I'll make the motion. To approve waiver.
I'll second.
Mr. Backdoor,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes,
Mr. Greg Miller,
Yes.
thank you. The next item, and I really don't, the solicitor will have to tell us if we actually need a motion for this. The Green Hills Corporate Center is the headquarters for Penske. Penske is the only tenant of Green Hills Corporate Center. Penske is funding an addition and reconfiguration of the front of the building. They have requested a waiver of land development for what they are doing. They have received in the past 2 other waivers of land development for other things that they've done on the property. Administration spoke to the planning commission and saying that we do not believe this particular request for a waiver of land development is a good idea and is justified because in this case, it also involves moving a sewage pumping station, which is a significant facility. This isn't just prettying up the front of the building. That the sewage pumping station involved is governed by an agreement between the city of Reading, Robeson Township, Cumru Township, and the property owner, Green Hills Corporate Center. It's a significant facility. And it is administration's recommendation and the planning commission's recommendation not to grant a waiver of land development for that particular project. In other words, to require them to submit a land development plan, because this is kind of a big deal.
Is this something that, like, I know with a lot of these waivers, there's like 6 different things baked in. Is this where like something where we can say you can have a waiver for A, B, and C, but not X, Y, and Z?
In this case, no, because what they want to do to the building that pumping station has to be. It's an integral part of their project. Now, a lot of times when we consider waivers of land development, it would be for something like, let's take Newcastle. They do have to do stormwater for that driveway because it's a lengthy driveway, but it's just stormwater. They don't have any utilities involved. In this case, there's stormwater, there are utilities, I believe we might even be talking to Mr. Rogatsky again about those funky crosswalks out on Cockle. There are a lot of things going on with this particular plan that are not happening for something like phase 1 of Newcastle's improvements. But the star of the show is the pumping station.
Are they looking to expand upon one of their buildings or build a whole new building?
They are not expanding, they are altering the front of the building. They are calling it a customer experience center. When I spoke with their representative, he also said that they would be doing training there for their newer facility in a different part of Berks County, as well as introducing customers who want to rent their trucks. There's a kind of a pavilion type setup. They're demolishing the front of just the front of the one building, putting in like a pavilion and a very, very large patio setup. And they're changing the driveway, how traffic circulates in that area of the building.
And do we know why they don't want to submit a land development plan?
Cheaper. And I was very frank in the planning commission meeting when I was asked, why am I against a waiver of land development? And my answer was one word: leverage. About the pumping station. Because Cumru Township would desire not only to assist them with relocating their pumping station, but right now that pumping station and what's baked into those intermunicipal agreements is a series of adds and deducts from multiple pumps. We believe they can simplify the situation with just 1 meter instead of reading 4 meters and add this, deduct this, add it. It seriously complicates everyone's life and complicates how we, remember that City of Reading sewer bill we talked about earlier in the meeting? It complicates that bill the way it's done. We believe that whole scenario can be simplified. We actually believe we can reduce the cost of what they're doing out there. But we need to get them to the table to talk to us.
We need to vote on this.
And that's what I don't know, Kelsey.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a sketch plan. So, and I think the gentleman was at the planning commission meeting. We said, do you want this to appear on the board of commissioners agenda? Are you requesting this? And he didn't really answer, but just to be safe, I would probably want a motion.
I'll make a motion not to approve the waiver of land development for the Penske Customer Experience Center.
I'll second.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Pat Dorr.
Yes.
Mr. Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes. But
Thank you.
can we go back to them, Gene, with everything you just said and just basically say, here's what we think? long story short.
Yes, and I actually had a conversation with the plan representative, I think it was on Friday. And after I explained all that, and we had quite a discussion at the planning commission meeting where the same gentleman was there. And he said, well, is the rest of my land development plan gonna be held up because of the pump station? And I said, Cumru Township has a very good reputation, I think you heard that earlier from Mr. Carabello, of trying to work with developers. I don't wanna hold up the improvement of this building, but I wanna make sure the pump station is built correctly and that we have the proper amendments to the intermunicipal sewer agreement to go along with it. Because this does affect that quarterly payment that we send to the city of Reading.
And what we just voted doesn't preclude them from coming to the table, talking with us, working it all out, and then.
Correct.
Favor approval. Yeah, okay.
Correct. You could also, as you know very well, we do, Cumru Township. I think the solicitor could tell me if I'm wrong in this, but I believe Cumru Township is a little more liberal than some other municipalities with allowing for conditional approvals. In other words, we can approve a plan with conditions and the developer can then set up their escrow, start their improvements at their risk. But we're still able to have some leverage, to talk to them about certain things. And that's what I described to the gentleman over the phone, that yes, we can still process his plan, but this will help kick into a higher gear, talking with all the entities involved with this sewer pumping station. The next item is simply a reaffirmation of a previous approval for the Imperial View subdivision. This is a 3-lot subdivision on Imperial Drive. And it is subject to, I believe we got the sewage planning module approval, but there are certain fees that the developer has not yet paid. So we need a reaffirmation of this approval because the recorder of deeds will not record the plan unless the approval is within 90 days of the recording.
Sounds pretty straightforward. Is there any concern about us not getting the fees?
Yeah, that's why we won't let go of the plan until we get the money.
But so. Reaffirming approval doesn't affect that in any way.
Right, basically, this says in very flowery language, we'll reaffirm the approval, and when you write us certain checks, then we'll let you record your plan at the recorder of deeds.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Backdoor?
Yes.
Mr. Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller?
Yes.
Thank you. A similar situation with the Berks County Waste Transfer Facility on 724. I saw a DEP approval that was obtained. I believe what's holding them up in terms of construction is the railroad. I'm sure you're shocked at that. Railroads don't work very fast, administratively. So this is asking for reaffirmation of that approval, subject to any outstanding issues being complied with. As I said, they did get their DEP approval already, and I think we're just really waiting on the railroad.
So.
I'll second.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Backdoor,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. And last but not least, in administration, Greater Governor Mifflin Community Days, a letter was sent out to quite a number of residents in the Mifflin Park area, I think about 300 letters, about the temporary traffic regulations. We are going to create a 1-block, 1-way loop at the entrance to Community Days. There's also a flyer that we sent to those residents. Some of them are up on the kiosk. This year, Community Days is getting a shuttle bus that goes around from the high school to the park and then to the Community Days site. trying to alleviate some of that parking traffic in Mifflin Park. And, apparently I'll also be talking to Community Days about the baseball team now. So, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on over to Public Works.
Good evening, update on the Montrose Boulevard Stormwater Project, the pipe work is about 60% done. We did have some hiccups with, the intertwined, UGI gas services and Maine, but that's been worked out. UGI's moved their, facilities, so we're moving on. We hope in the next couple of weeks, we'll finish it up and, get that paved. Sanitary sewer projects that are still pending, Cedar Top Road project is expected to begin next Monday on the 24th. That's gonna be a long, drawn out, very complicated project with not only large stormwater, but deep sanitary sewer. And again, we'll have to encounter some gas utilities that will work around, but we'll get through that. Flying Hills Drive, the permanent paving is was scheduled for this week. They pushed that back to this coming Monday, the 24th. And that should go pretty quickly. That was a relatively short, piece, 160 feet. They'll mill out that lane and replace that. I'm requesting, a price not to exceed, $8,800 for security cameras for the Flying Hills pumping station. It'll be a set of 6 cameras, some inside, some outside on the 2 buildings. And then there's a generator building at the upper elevation and the pumping station itself in the floodway. It's been a goal of Public Works for several decades to get cameras down there so we can keep an eye on things not only remotely, but also when we do have high water, which we experience once in a while when the Schuylkill decides to back up. So I guess we're looking for a motion on that, Gene?
Yes.
Some,
Second.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Baddoor,
yes.
Mr. Donnell,
yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sewer meter project, we have the 5 meters throughout the system. We're upgrading the electronics. We've discussed this a few times before. We're gonna get things more digital. And again, these electronics are 12 years old and are out exposed to the weather sometimes. So that project's moving on. We're looking for a partial payment of $30,350.30 to be approved tonight. And I think the total budget for that project was right around $60,000.
Are you saying we came in half of what we?
No, sir, this is just a partial payment. Sorry.
Would you say that we're still on track for what was originally budgeted?
Yes, they purchased all the equipment and now just a matter of getting them back in and get everything installed. We gotta run some wires through some conduits that slowed us down. When the conduits were originally constructed, they weren't conducive to pulling new wire, but we worked that out. So we're moving along. I'm satisfied.
I make the motion. I'll second.
Mr. Baddoor,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
1786 Welsh Road, the police training and evidence facility, the former township building. We've discussed a few times the upgrading of the electrical system, the lights. Pagoda has finished that work. We've actually come in $5,900 under the original budget, the quoted price from Pagoda. They gave us worst case scenarios for pulling some of the wire. And they had a very good electrician out here who streamlined some of the work. But it's given the building a different complexion and it's much safer. We only have 2 panels now instead of 7. We have 1 meter instead of 2. So it's worked out really well. So I'm asking for approval to pay the remainder of that project, $52,726.75 to Pagoda. And again, that's under budget.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Baddoor,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
tours are available on request for board members if you'd like to see it. The second component of that project was the HVAC system. I believe it was last meeting, you paid some $14,000 for the heating systems in the basement. Tonight, we're asking for $12,750 to cover the HVAC system in the upper level. There is a $2,000 retainage that we're holding back from Landis Bonfido because they can't test the heating system yet until UGI connects the service line. When we did the utility project out here for the fire station, we did run gas up. It's right there. It's just a matter of UGI coming out and doing their things and getting that scheduled.
I'll make a motion to finish the HVAC work. Second.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Backdoor,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
Unless you have any questions, that's all I have for this evening.
I just want to emphasize the Cedar Top Road sanitary sewer replacement project. There is no other way to say it. It is going to be a huge inconvenience for everybody, including me, because my property fronts on there. It is, Cedar Top Road takes almost 10,000 cars a day. Not quite, but almost. And it connects 3 municipalities, Kenhurst, Cumru, and Moulton at the other end, and we're at the Moulton end. It is, so there's just no other way to say it. I can almost guarantee you're gonna take complaints. But, thank God the sewer needs to be replaced because the road is shot. So at the end of a very painful project, we will have less I&I and a good road, but it's not gonna be fun.
The road is really bad. How the sanitary or the stormwater pipe has not collapsed in the last several years, I don't know. We did a Herculean effort about 10 years ago to insert plastic pipe in the existing 36-inch pipe. We got that done. That's held things together, but there's no way to fix it. It's much like what Montrose was, it was just falling apart. And yes, there's plenty of springs on that hill, and that sewer pipe is 60-some years old. It looks like a sieve. It's going in the 20 connection one, and it'll do cyanide there also.
Okay, we'll go over to the engineering.
On June 11th, we opened bids for our 2024 street project, which consists of Hunter's Road, or a section of Hunter's Road. We did receive 3 bids. Barwis Construction was the lowest apparent bidder for a total amount of $683,043.02. Their bids met the qualifications as per our contract specifications. Our recommendation this evening is to award the contract to Barwis Construction for the total amount of $683,043.02.
So moved.
I second.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Backdoor,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
Real quick question for you there.
Sure.
Just because I'm curious, is a spread of nearly $100,000 like something typical you'd see in bids for a project such as this?
The higher the number, you're more subject to have a larger spread. The 2 high bidders were within much more closer. Barwis Construction is a local company. They are located within Cumru Township. They have done work for us. My understanding is they were looking for work, so I believe their bid was much more competitive than H&K Construction Master Services. But typically, usually if it's a very competitive field, the bids are usually closer. In this case, we saw a disparity. It's probably most likely this time of year. Some contractors have a larger workload, so they might be bidding higher, but Barwis Construction, their price was very competitive in comparison to our previous estimate that we prepared for the PIB loan. Our bid was around, our price about a year and a half ago was about $679,000 for that same section. So I was at least pleased that that price came in fairly competitive at this time of year. Just the next item, an update on the Cedar Top Road geotechnical evaluation. Our geotechnical engineer did complete all the work. We did provide them some of our CAD work, aerial topography and so forth. They're in the process of completing the slope analysis and they will have to formulate a detailed report on their findings. We hope to have this report by either within the next week or so. Once we do receive that report, we'll forward that on to the township staff, and public works department for their evaluation and for discussion for what type of mitigation plan that we may want to consider in correcting this issue. So unfortunately, I don't have the report this evening, but I hope to have it within the next week or so and for the July meeting to be able to report on any recommendations. That's all I have unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, we'll go over to Elsie.
All right, thank you. Item A is the continuation of the discussions that we've been having the last several meetings regarding the proposed zoning ordinance text amendment. And just to bring everybody up to speed, the original discussion focused on 3 items, but now it's sort of transpired into 5 different items that could be considered for a text amendment. The first 3 have already been brought up in previous meetings. The first one was including certain regulations for the wind turbines and wind energy systems. And I believe at the last meeting, the board was sort of unanimous in their decision to this amendment being something that they would want in Middleton. The second item would be amending section 202 of the ordinance, which would be with respect to retreat centers in the definition section of the ordinance, and then specifically defining those and then deciding where in the township they could be either a permitted use by right or a special exception or conditional use. And I was authorized to do some research on kind of definitions for what a retreat center could be. And I was kind of surprised because I only found a couple of other townships that have retreat centers to find. But I thought it was a good start. I sent Jean and Patty my finding. The things that I liked in the definitions were regulations regarding a required minimum lot area. So, you know, the property has to be a certain size in order for a retreat center to be permitted on that space. Fairly long side and rear setbacks. Regulations regarding the maximum number of guests at one time based on the acreage of the property. Certain off-street parking requirements, also based on the number of guests and employees, maximum lot coverage, and then very specific water and sewer requirements for these kind of retreat centers. So my suggestion would be to include retreat centers in the definition section of the ordinance using these types of regulations, and then permitting them as either a conditional use or a special exception in rural conservation districts or agricultural districts, because that's where they seem to kind of fit best based on what they are. So that's, and again, the planning commission suggested looking into this, and I think if I were to take a stab at drafting that definition, it probably would be beneficial to have the planning commission review that language and see if they have any recommendations specifically based on the language that we come up with.
I think the biggest decision for this board would be special exception or conditional use. Remember, conditional use comes before the board of commissioners. We've had, over the decades, different boards have had a very different philosophy. For many years, there was the boards in place, never, ever, ever wanted a conditional use hearing, ever, about anything. They didn't want to meet any more than necessary. There have been other boards who want conditional use hearings.
So I guess my interpretation of that is conditional use hearings give the township a little bit more leverage or ability to intervene more explicitly.
The difference is if it's a conditional use application, the applicant must come before this board of commissioners in order for them to evaluate the plan, evaluate the use, ask them questions, have a full hearing, deciding whether or not it fits within the regulations of the ordinance. If it was categorized as a special exception, then the applicant would go before the zoning hearing board, and the zoning hearing board would get to make those determinations and put certain reasonable conditions on any decision made. So it really is just a jurisdictional issue. Who gets to hear it, this board or the zoning hearing board?
Seeing as we are elected by the residents of the township, I think we should take accountability for that sort of action. So I would be in favor of conditional use.
And just to make sure I understand your comments, so right now, retreat centers is authorized, or is, I should say, an acceptable use under commercial. We pull it out of commercial and put it in the rural conservation and agri?
Retreat center is not even a defined use under the zoning ordinance right now. It's lumped in with places of worship. So if you remember, the reason this all came to light was because we had some zoning hearing board litigation that was going on based on the words retreat center being described under places of worship, but not really being defined. And so the original thought was, well, let's just remove retreat centers from the definition altogether. But the planning commission properly pointed out that that could be considered exclusionary zoning, and that maybe we should define it to keep it within the zoning ordinance, but far more regulated.
All right, I would agree with Andy, his comment on the conditional use.
Do we need a motion to draft the?
I don't think we need a motion because we're so preliminarily into this process of drafting this text amendment that I think I just need direction about if the board wants that language to be posed as conditional use or special exception. And then I can take it from there, and you'll get to, obviously, everyone's gonna get to see a draft of the ordinance, and we'll have to advertise it and go through the whole process. So this is just very preliminary and just getting your thoughts and opinions on how you want to draft it.
Yeah, I'm fine with the language, I'm fine with the conditional use.
All right, then the third item in our previous discussions related to the zoning amendment was the removal of sections 411B, 16, and 17 from the ordinance. And those sections define what uses are permitted by right in the mixed use and general commercial district. So if you remember, effectively by removing those sections, the board would be removing warehouse uses, freight terminal uses, and wholesale and distribution uses as a use by right within the MUCG district of the township. And just to remind you, those uses by right were added by amendment in 2023. The planning commission memo from May recommended further discussion about changing the uses. And I believe at the last meeting, the board wanted to table that discussion until at least this meeting.
Given that there's 4 of us tonight, what happens if we end up in a tie?
Motion does not carry.
So it just kind of dies on the vine, basically?
Yeah, a motion that is tied dies.
All right, can we kick this to the July meeting?
Yeah, we can
Yes,
table that.
motion, and Mr. Donnell asked a question, can it be reintroduced at a future meeting? Absolutely.
I mean, along those lines, Andy, do we just kick it to the July meeting?
Does everybody have a firm opinion on voting on this issue at this point? I mean, I do, but if it's worth having further deliberation.
It may be worth pushing to the July meeting for the next 2 items.
I think we're gonna need our fifth here, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting necessarily that we even vote tonight, but is it worth, while we're here and have the time, is it worth like discussing the issue at all?
I would do, yeah, I would just push it to July.
All right, so there is a new addition to this discussion, which is the fourth item, now that we can talk about, which is amending the zoning ordinance to increase the width of fire access lanes from 24 feet, which it's now in the ordinance, to 26 feet. And I will throw this over to the chief and Jean to give their opinions on this, because I think that was promulgated mostly by the chief's request.
Certainly, it's been something that's come up at numerous plans. That's one thing that we have been finding out, developers are trying to stick more than what they can in the paper bag. And we suffer because everybody's like, oh yeah, it looks great on paper. Yeah, go try to drive around the parking lot. That's why we're asking for that. And I don't think asking for 2 more feet is a whole lot. In the grand scheme of things, because most of the time, I get people to redesign it, so you don't have to ask them to redesign it. It's already specified. It has to do with access. And truck swing, turn radius. And now they get these parking lots. Unless everyone drives a smart car. Some of these parking spaces, much personal truck doesn't fit in because they've made those even smaller. So it hangs out over into the cartway. So really you have 26 feet of cartway. You might not have 26 feet of cartway depending on the parks there. But this is one of these things that has come up over time, and G can jump in here at any time in plans that we've always gone back to. And a lot of it goes with footprints and areas too, depending on the building and where it's at. You need a certain distance and footprint to set up an aerial device. Because it usually doesn't end well when you put it off of a hard surface. Usually have a big towing bill or something with damage done because they don't sit too well. So that's why I asked for one of these things to be straightened out, since we're doing this stuff with zoning, and this is one that comes up multiple times in a year.
So this would affect Article 10 of the zoning ordinance, which has to do with parking and configuration of parking lots. It would also introduce that we would have to, in order to coordinate, we would also have to do an amendment to the SALDO, which, because that section 509 of the SALDO addresses driveways. So that's the one thing wrinkle that this would add is we have to get involved with the SALDO. I'm not aware at this time of any other amendments to the SALDO that are floating around in the back.
Is there any downside to doing this?
Stormwater. We do. Now,
More impervious surface.
yes, more impervious surface. There are pros and cons. There aren't that many more places in the township. Despite everything that's gone on in the past few years, there aren't that many more places in the township for large development to occur. But that's the main effect, is that if what developers would argue if they were standing in front of you now would be, oh, it's more impervious surface, it's more stormwater. That's the one downside. I think the most important thing, if the board does not wish to consider widening the width between parking spaces, which is right now 24 feet, definitely the driveway issue in the SALDO. One of the reasons, I'll give you an example. One of the reasons the Imperial View subdivision went from a 7-lot subdivision down to 3, it was originally filed as a 7-lot subdivision with a single cul-de-sac and the lots spread around the cul-de-sac. According to the fire code, that lane, road, whatever you want to call it, shared driveway would have to be 26 feet wide. Our ordinance only required 24. But it was a real problem because in that area of the township, if there's a fire, you're going to need lots of equipment to be hauling water back there. And the developer elected to forget it. I'm just going to put in 3 lots, each with a driveway off of Imperial. So now we're going to have a whole bunch of driveways off of Imperial, but they meet ordinance. It meets our zoning and our subdivision ordinance. But this issue of the width of the driveway or an access road really does make operational difference in how things are configured. Will that happen a lot in the future? I don't think so.
Widening the road to 26 feet also makes a difference for snow plowing and leaf picking. So Public Works is right behind that.
We need to vote on this.
I think what we would need is, again, nodding heads either for or against. I will say, to piggyback off of Mr. McNichol's comment, the road that I live on, Kalen Drive, is 26 feet wide with parking on one side. And then it goes around the bend and intersects with another road called Castleton. Castleton is also 26 feet wide. In actuality, they're continuous. I have no idea why there's a different name. But on Castleton, there's parking on both sides. And I drive a small car and I cannot get a car between what's going on the street when both sides of the road are parked up with people's vehicles. It's also a public safety issue. If there was a fire on Castleton, when everybody's at home, parking on both sides of the street, and everybody has a driveway, by the way. So it's not, it's that we have too many cars in the neighborhood. Police and fire would not be able to get there. So this issue of street width and whether there's parking or no parking really is a serious issue. I would say, if you wanted a recommendation from me, I would say we should do this and let a developer argue in front of a zoning hearing board or in front of a board of commissioners why they shouldn't be having to do this.
But theoretically, a developer could get an exception.
They could get a variance for it, yeah.
Okay.
Or apply for it.
Okay. Right. Sure. But we don't need a motion, it's just.
No,
So,
And this direction on if that's something that the board is would anyway. Okay, and then the fifth item with respect to the zoning text amendment, comes from the last planning commission meeting. The planning commission meeting recommended that if the zoning ordinance was going to be amended, that maybe there should be a discussion on including what's called aggretainment into the ordinance. Both in defining it, kind of like retreat centers, defining it and then including it within certain districts. Since it's sort of a new phenomena, and basically what it is like farm-related tourism or farm-related entertainment activities on agricultural land for either recreational or educational purposes. So think like corn mazes, pumpkin patches, hay rides, fruit picking, and it's often coupled with like live music or food trucks and things like that.
yes, it's also, so one thing that comes to mind. I lived out in farm country in central Pennsylvania for a while, and it was 2 miles away, but could hear it very clearly were tractor pulls. I feel like that's something we would not want to be expect. It sounds, I don't know if anybody's familiar with what a tractor pull is, but it's literally just a massive vehicle pulling a sled into the dirt as hard as it can. It sounds, it's very loud.
Yeah, I grew up in Old so.
Yeah. So is that something we would fall into this, or is that separate?
It could, it just depends on the way that you want to define it. So you could define it in ways that, restrict it to things that don't include that. But we're just trying to gauge whether the board has an interest in having me or Jean or both of us look at the way other townships have defined this, sort of like we did for retreat centers, and see if it's something you want to include in the ordinance.
There is some language, I was poking around, in other ordinances. Another thing that is very popular with agri-entertainment are event venues. Turning a barn into a wedding barn or, having a party in a barn and whatnot. And in that case, it's really about the potential traffic associated with something like that. Not necessarily. So for instance, if the hearing that we had a short time ago, they could have their restaurant and bar and have a band in there. They don't need a permit for that. I think the idea is that partly the control of traffic associated with some of these events. We all like to go to these kind of things, but they can have some additional considerations. The purpose of the planning commission bringing it up is that it has occurred in other municipalities in Berks County that they've had to deal with this issue of agri-entertainment. Does this township want to address that issue or not? Another is, so put a pin in that for a moment. Another interesting thing is I just got this a day or two ago, a zoning hearing board application for Airbnb.
Does our ordinance not cover short-term
No,
rentals?
the
like that?
closest we have is boarding houses, but that's really not the same thing. They are asking for this zoning hearing application, which has not been advertised yet. This will be for the July zoning hearing board. Is asking for a complete relief from section 713 of the zoning ordinance, which is the boarding house, piece of the zoning ordinance. And that, so the biggest difference would be the boarding house section of our ordinance requires the owner to live at the facility. They do not want to do that. They've acquired a property that has already 2 units on it, and they want to rent out both separately as Airbnbs, and they're not going to live there.
I mean, Kelsey, I mean, in both of these cases, it sounds like. Correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like township would benefit from clearly defining. Terms at the very least, if not setting what's required, but it sounds like that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's Airbnbs and Verbos and those things are a huge issue with a lot of municipalities that haven't considered amending their zoning ordinances to address them, and because of the prevalence of them these days, I would recommend creating a section defining what they are and restricting them based on how the board feels they should be restricted.
We want to do that,
Just again, we need to define, we need a new definition, and we probably,
we need to make a motion for this.
I just think you need to give, the solicitor direction as to whether that's something you'd like her to draft up.
This doesn't seem like there's a downside in doing it.
no, I
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a downside, actually. And this is a case, this is, by the way, a natural process. It's not like our zoning ordinance is particularly bad relative to anyone else's. This is the natural process that happens. Uses change over time. Sometimes it's due to technology, sometimes it's just due to society. In this case, it's kind of, I would suggest that Airbnb is kind of a combination of both technology, the internet, allowing people to put their properties up for advertisement and allowing those rentals to occur in the background financially. And, oops, oh, this is happening out there. We've got to do something about this. We are absolutely not the only municipality in Berks County, and certainly not in the state, dealing with these type of issues.
Yeah, I agree. So, it sounds like Airbnbs or short-term rentals we can look into, and then what about agri-team? And I don't think we got a decision on.
Here's a question. On the entertainment, I mean, we have no recreation at all in the township. It's been taken away for probably the last 7 or 8 years because the Park and Recs director is no longer doing, that position is eliminated. And I remember going to Exeter Township for a hayride and during the Oktoberfest and down there. And they had tractors taking on hay rods, and it wasn't loud at all. So I don't understand what the problem would be. I don't think there's any issue with that, with noise,
Thank you.
with noise in itself.
No. Just to clarify, that is not what I'm referring to. Tractor pull is something entirely
A
different.
tractor pulls like a race.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like an October festival where instead of going to some other municipality, you have one in your own backyard.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting we don't even allow tractor pulls. I'm just saying, I would want to point out, like, if Kelsey's drafting language around agri-tainment, we consider things like the breadth of agri-tainment and the noise and how that. might
Time of
affect-
day.
Yeah, time of day, that kind of thing. I'm not saying we exclude anything from that language up front.
I understand restriction on time. I understand that 100%. I was just concerned about the lack of recreation in the township itself. And then maybe I misunderstood. I just assumed from what I heard
I'm concerned with that too, yeah.
that by not having any kind of like Oktoberfest like Exeter used to have, it was, I don't even know if they still have it, but it was a really nice family oriented event. They don't run it all night.
think we're good with it.
We're good with looking into that, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that takes care of item A, and then moving on to item B, zoning map changes. This is again a carryover from the last several meetings. The original proposal was to rezone 3 specific parcels in the GI district back to rural conservation. They were rezoned from rural conservation to general industrial in 2018, and they are the subject of ongoing litigation, as this board knows. The planning commission did review this issue, and in May, they drafted a memo recommending waiting until the litigation regarding the rezoning is resolved to do anything. At the last meeting, there was some initial discussion about potentially rezoning the parcels to something other than rural conservation, like some sort of medium or low density residential. And the board did agree at that point to table this discussion until at least this meeting. So that's sort of where we are. Just an update on the litigation. Sorry. I have, even though the township withdrew, I've been keeping an eye on it so I could update the board. And the judge, I think I told you this last meeting, the appointed judge did remand the case to the zoning hearing board for a new hearing. Later, the judge vacated that order and then remanded the case to another attorney, Michelle Mayfield, to act as a hearing officer in place of the zoning hearing board. So that's where it stood. In the last few days, the interveners, which is the Route 10 Realty and North Point, have since appealed those orders. So those orders and the appeal is going to head up to the Commonwealth Court. So it looks like this case is going to be an ongoing litigation for quite some time.
Yeah, so I guess my concern there, Kelsey, is like, instead of setting the vision for how we want to develop the township now, knowing that like, whatever becomes of this case, the warehouse developers win, a warehouse goes in there, they inherit the zoning at the time the plan was submitted, right? But irrespective like of that outcome, knowing it will be what it will be, why wouldn't we go forth with a vision for how we're going to develop the township moving forward?
I think your comment's good, Andy, but I would just say we kick this to July.
I agree, besides, what you're talking about is a comprehensive lead, which course along.
Okay, it sounds like you want to table this until the July meeting.
July meeting.
All right, and then the last item, item C, is the LERTA ordinance. The ordinance was approved to be advertised at the last meeting. It was advertised. So now I would just need a motion to enact that ordinance.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Mr. Bill Miller,
No,
Mr. Baddoor,
No.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
and Mr. Greg.
Yes.
So the motion doesn't carry, would be advertising for the standard 60 days.
The advertisement was on June 5th. So I would need to re-advertise if so, I think if somebody wanted that motion to be on the July agenda.
Put it on the July agenda.
And Kelsey, if you can make sure I get a copy when you send the ad again.
Yep, sure, I'll keep it on. And if there's no other questions, that is all I have for tonight.
Jean, you're the payment of the bills.
Yes, we have payments of bills for the last 4 weeks. And one of them included the City of Reading payment that Mrs. Carpenter referred to. We are requesting authorization to pay the bills.
I make a motion that we pay the bills.
I'll second
Mr. Baddoor,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
it. Yes,
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes. correspondence here as well, Jim?
You have the Solid Waste Authority's 2023 annual report. This is not in the report, but I would say to the board that the Berks County Solid Waste Authority does a fabulous job at running the county recycling center and running the special recycling collections, such as the paper shredding, hazardous materials, and also they run the area up on County Road where they can collect electronics. And I just think that the Solid Waste Authority headed by Jane Meeks does a fabulous job. And just want to, no, not related. But she does a fabulous job of running that, and she also assists all the municipalities with filing for the various recycling grants that we get. So I just wanted to give her a shout out.
The PC alternative, is that you as well, Gene?
Sure, we have a gentleman here, Mitchell. Well, Mitchell McHale had sent in his resume and is asking for consideration to be appointed either as an alternate for the planning commission or an alternate to the zoning hearing board. Why don't you tell us about yourself?
Okay. My name is Mitchell. I live in Flying Hills. I'm 24. I am a school teacher. That is my daytime job. I teach fourth grade in Wilson School District. And then outside of that, I'm an advisor to elected officials, strategic advisory to county level officials, statewide officials, state reps, congressional candidates. Work with them in community outreach, community building, community legislative ideas that they want to come up with. And I just wanted to continue to become more involved. I chaired, when I lived in Chester County, where I grew up, I chaired our drug and alcohol countywide advisory council. Along with working within our socioeconomic disadvantaged families in Coatesville. Work with children at youth. And it's been my life of wanting to help my community grow. And I reached out to Lisa Rao, who I have mutual friends with, and she put me in touch with Gene, and I wanted to get involved in my township that I live in. So I wanted to reach out and join the planning commission or the zoning board. If possible.
And it's up to the board whether you choose to do that. Both of those boards have alternate positions available. And do you have a preference?
Planning commission, if I can choose.
I think that would be more amenable to your very packed schedule according to your resume.
First off, you sound like a super ambitious guy.
Yeah.
So, thank you, for wanting to be involved in what the government needs for young people. And please don't take this personally. It has nothing to do with you. This is more me addressing the board is I wanted to bring up the fact that we have an extremely well qualified individual that previously volunteered for this position, and it's no discredit to you. Person has decades of experience doing planning and has volunteered their time to do this. And it seems irresponsible for us. Again, nothing against this gentleman. If this alternative candidate were not on the table, I would say seem like the perfect person for the job. But given that we have somebody with decades of experience and all the time and the willingness to do it, it would seem irresponsible to not consider that person for the planning commission alternative. If there's another alternative that you'd be open to, I think that's great.
I would do the other board as well.
I think
There are 3 planning.
I might interject a comment. If you know, this is a learning process, obviously, and then the planning commission is a great opportunity for any individual to sink their teeth and at least get started. Now, and these are alternative positions that I'm correct there. So, in my judgment, I would put him on the planning
start there, and as an alternative, because he can learn that way. And if we do have a more experienced individual in zoning, would be a better fit for that person.
But I guess to build on Andy's point, I mean, Mr. Kepper is who we're referring to here. Mr. Kepper applied to be an alternate, well, actually to be on the board and then trickled down to be an alternate. And we said no to him. And as I'll echo Andy's point here, I mean, it's nothing against you, Mitchell. I'm sure you're a great, very knowledgeable person. You're ambitious. But if we're gonna say no to somebody that literally ran the planning commission for a period of time, it's hard for me to go in for somebody that has no background whatsoever. And once again, I don't mean that as an insult.
Well, you wouldn't have anyone when you started,
Very true.
We were elected,
but you still don't have any experience.
we were elected. This is an appointed position and we have.
That's right, this is an appointed position.
Yeah,
And
it's our job to appoint the person who will
They
best
take
serve the
that.
township. Yes, we have a very.
So
I agree with you, Dave.
Oh, you're fine.
I agree with you, Dave.
if we have, Gene, did I hear Gene say we have 3 spots open?
We have 3 planning commission alternate spots open, and we have 2 zoning hearing board alternate spots open.
And Kevin was voted no, so let's move on to Mr. Mitchell.
So I'll.
Already had a vote for Kevin. Want to have another vote?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
I'll do another
Okay.
vote.
But
It's not
I would
gonna
ask,
pass.
I would ask, I'm happy to have any number of votes. I would ask Mr. Miller and Mr. Batdorf to state for the record why they wouldn't support somebody with the experience that Mr. Kepper.
I stand by my no vote. I don't have to give you an explanation.
I'm not asking you to explain it to me, I'm asking you to explain it to the public.
I am not explaining myself. I voted no.
Okay.
Okay, I will vote for this candidate.
Mr. Batdorf,
I voted for this candidate, because like you said, we needed youth. Heck, we got you 2 guys that had no experience at all. What were you doing now? You're trying to make decisions for a young man like this. Okay.
I'm happy to support you, given that we have several
Hypocrisy
seats.
to me, I'm sorry.
Okay, given that we have a bunch of seats, that's.
You just said, I'm happy to support.
Yes,
Then support it.
please, if you would like to speak into the microphone, I will support him, given the knowledge that we have more open seats.
So let's put them both, let's vote on both of them again, and we'll see what goes.
We gotta do one at a time.
Let's start with Mr. Kepler.
So
What is the motion?
I would move to have Mr. Kepper added as an alternative to one of the 3 open alternative seats.
I'll second.
We're talking the planning commission, correct?
Correct.
And who seconded? Greg? Okay, sorry. Mr. Bill Miller,
No,
Mr. Baddoor,
no,
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll make the motion, the gentleman here, Mitchell, I'm sorry.
Mikhail.
Mikhail, sorry. Be added as an alternative to, you said you preferred the
Planning
planning,
commission, yeah.
the planning commission.
second
I'll
that
second.
motion.
You got it.
Mr. Baddoor,
Repeat the motion.
That he be added as an alternative.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yeah,
Mr. Greg Miller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, board. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I fell asleep there for a second. We're over to, Commissioner Donnell. I guess you have the draft disclaimer for YouTube.
Item B,
Yeah, is there anything you wanted to share, Gene?
okay, if we're moving on, so can we come back to refuse collection after this? Yes. The board may recall that you directed at your last meeting for the meeting to be published on YouTube after the meeting. The board also, directed, me to devise a disclaimer, which I submitted to both Mr. Donnell, who is the administrative liaison, and to the solicitor. Both of them got a look at it. Essentially, the disclaimer says, one, YouTube is not the official record of a meeting. Minutes approved by the board are the official record. Two, that if the information in a YouTube video cannot be certainly relied upon for acting or making decisions, information should be verified independently. For example, you could be watching a YouTube video at a much different date than when the meeting actually occurred, and the information could have changed. Three, is the possibility that under YouTube's community guidelines, that videos could be removed. For example, I did run across one Pennsylvania municipality that had individuals talking about racism in a way in which they favored racism, and YouTube removed the video. So that can happen if language starts violating their community guidelines. And fourth, we can't be responsible for issues beyond our control in regard to posting of videos. So that is the disclaimer in a nutshell. I don't know if Mr. Donnell wanted to say anything else on that regard.
That pretty much covered it. I can read it, it's right here, but that's pretty much it. I made a very subtle tweak to Gene's original proposal, which was just a disclaimer specific to Board of Commissioners meetings, and I suggested that we just make it a little bit more generic. So should we ever decide we want to publish other stuff, we can just reuse the same disclaimer. Yeah.
I don't think we need a motion from the board.
No, just, it's a policy decision, so as long as everyone is okay with the language, we can go ahead and fix that.
Thank you.
Refuse collection at Flying Hills.
Yes, in 2025, we're gonna start negotiations with our current hauler. The discussion is gonna be with toters, because they're gonna go to a one-person truck that will have arms on it, they'll grab the container and dump it into the truck. The reason I bring this up from Flying Hills, because some of the homes on Muirfield will not be able to store this toter, because they're looking at 96-gallon toters or 64-gallon toters, and they will not have space to put these anywhere. So I want to give heads up to Flying Hills so they go back to their management and determine if they want to build a separate room so they can place their trash containers, or if they want to get their own hauler to see if they don't have to go to these toters. But we are going to be instructed that we must go to the toters, because they're not going to have three persons on a truck anymore, because too many people are getting hurt for workman's comp with back injuries. So they're going to have automatic systems, and more of the townships and boroughs are going to this. So I'm trying to get a Flying Hills heads up so they can come up with a plan, because the single homes and the apartments, they do have places, but some of those places are Muirfield, and there's a lot more like Muirfield, the townhouses that don't have room for a toter. So, so you're forward there, man, to talk to the board of directors and Mr. Whitman and see which avenue they want to go, because we're going to get forced into this. We have no choice.
You're really not have a choice. I mean, I don't understand how, you could give me the microphone. Name writer, Flying Hills. You want to look for the push a button, name writer, Flying Hills. I don't understand how, as a township, we can look at a community that is about 20% of the entire community of Cumru Township and say, we can't collect your trash.
And do you want to go over there, just so you can be on camera then?
I'm not saying we can't collect your trash. I'm just saying you're gonna have to have a plan to store these trash containers.
Well, we have a bigger issue when we get to an automated trash system, okay? I think we have to really look at this. First of all, along with storing the trash containers, we have very many residents that live in the townhomes. And where are they going to put the trash container? All the parking is in the front of the house. So you have your house and you have all the parking. So where are these trash containers gonna go for this automated system? Like, that's a realistic question. It would have to go where the cars are. That doesn't make any sense. And I propose that I would like to discuss this at length. And have a better conversation about it than just, hey, we're gonna do this. Because this is 20% of the population of Cumru Township. These are your taxpayers. And you're saying we can't accommodate you with trash?
The haulers not bid on contracts. Because they all want to go to this where they have automatic system that grabs the container and empties it into the truck.
So
This is not our doing. We're being directed by the haulers.
every single hauler has given you a bid, only wanted automation.
We have two major haulers that did not submit bids because we wouldn't go to automation.
And what about a hybrid version of that? No hauler does a
That's-
hybrid version?
That's why I'm suggesting to you to talk to your board directors and Mr. Whitman and see which avenue. Maybe you want to break away from township collection and Mr. Whitman will come up with his own hauler to collect Flying Hills because of the situation. I'm trying to give you a heads up so you can plan on how you want to handle this.
I'm
And
grateful.
that's why I'm presenting this, because I know there's gonna be a problem with a lot of places. And it's not that we don't want to collect trash, but the haulers, they're dictating this to us. We're not the person in charge of it, they are.
We have a hauler there now. Have they informed us they're not gonna service this going forward?
No, they're gonna service it, but you're gonna have to have a place for them to pick up. It's just like Nan said, the trash containers have to be out in the parking spots. There's gonna be a one person in the truck. They just drive up, his arm comes out, grabs the container and dumps it in the truck. That's why I'm bringing this up now, because it's 25, we're gonna start negotiations with the current hauler. So you can talk about it, whatever he's gonna do down there is figure out how you wanna handle it. And that's why I'm bringing it up. I didn't wait to 25 to tell you, I told you 24.
I'm grateful you're telling us. I'm grateful this has come up, because we can discuss this. Because I just don't see how the township can look at 20% of the population of the township and say, hey, we're gonna do this, this is the only way to do this, and you're gonna be excluded.
If I can interrupt for just a second, this is the new industry standard with the trash collectors. We have some tangential relationships with a trash truck manufacturer. They built their backer truck. That's the way this industry is going. It's not that the township is changing, but it's the way the industry is going. So that's what he's trying to give you a heads up on.
I'm grateful for the heads up, I am, but I really think that we need to look at some other solutions with the township. And how this is gonna look, not just you figure it out. I mean, I wanna have a discussion about how this can look with the township.
Well, that makes sense. I want one thing. Like, I think obviously that makes sense. The township is gonna have to work with Flying Hills on this, so like, it's a good thing we're starting this conversation now. I want to just like, maybe play the hypothetical out a little bit, which is, suppose Flying Hills breaks away and gets their own trash, just hypothetically. How would I guess, because my understanding is that the hauler's base rates by the number of households. So would that potentially impact the cost of trash for residents outside of Flying Hills because there's a lower number of households?
Lower number of households, but if the rest of the township went to automated service, that would lower the cost. They're offsetting. May I please provide some facts? There's a little bit of confusion here. The township had to bid the contract, and it is required to bid this type of contract. We have to devise specifications telling the contractors what we would like them to bid on, if they choose to bid. We bid the contract in 2023 for the years 2024, 2025, and 2026. Two of the major trash haulers refused to bid and wrote us letters telling us why they refused to bid. Republic Services and Waste Management refused to bid on the contract because we did not require or accommodate this automated service. They are two of the biggest contractors in the area. We received 2 full bids and 1 partial bid. Then we took AJ Blazensky, which as everyone knows, was formerly Eagle because they've now merged. And Eagle / Blazensky, their representative said that this would be the last time that they would bid on a Cumru Township contract if we did not have automation. The other 2 entities that bid, one was Mascaro, and I did a calculation today that if today for 2024, Mascaro was picking up our trash, the refuse fee would be $500 a year and not $330 a year that it is today. So clearly, and then the other bidder would way beyond that would be paying $700 a year for trash. Where I'm going with this is the way the industry is going. Something has to be done. We have to write specifications by the summer of 2026 for the 2027 contract. And I understand, and the reason Mr. Miller is bringing this up, and I agree with bringing it up early, is that whatever happens with Flying Hills, I agree, there is no room for these type of containers. Whatever happens with Flying Hills administration needs a lot of time to deal with the outfall of that. But this is coming. And one option, I guarantee you, if we don't go to this type of collection, the refuse bill will be extremely expensive the next time around. And one option is for Flying Hills to get its own service, and just to service Flying Hill. Another option, if they stay with municipal service, is to have 2 trash districts. Anyone who is serviced by automated pays one type of rate, and anyone who as what's the type of service that we're talking about in Flying Hills, where they have to open gates, open closets, walk upstairs, go into trash rooms, that's called carry out service in the trash world. It's not carry out like getting chicken wings, it's a different kind of carry out. However, in regard to starting this discussion, we could do it a couple of different ways. One is the board could assign trash liaisons, and commissioners dealing with trash. And I know the whole meeting feels like a trash dumpster fire. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Commissioners to specifically talk about these issues. The other way you could do it is to resurrect. A long time ago, we had a refuse and recycling committee. Bern Township actually has one. They call it their solid waste committee. You could do something like that. But yes, we need to have some discussion on these issues.
So the idea of a solid waste committee, sort of to come up with plans, do the strategy leading into summer 2026.
Yes, generating ideas. I don't think they can enact any plans, but specifying the questions and generating the ideas that we need to find out more information. One of the problems with this whole thing is you can talk to the haulers, but until you actually issue bid specifications for them to bid on, you really don't know 100% what kind of reaction you're gonna get. But I think a committee like that could invite representatives of Blazinski and Mascaro and these different entities to talk to them about what's entailed with this type of pickup.
Theoretically, they could possibly act as a proxy to Flying Hill as well, perhaps, I mean, work together like you suggested with management of Flying Hill. Well, I definitely would, I mean, I'm grateful for the heads up, I really am. It's a lot better than when you split out the bill and no one knew and they started, I got 4 million phone calls the day you got the separate bills and they weren't in the tax things. I didn't know that was happening. So I'm grateful, very grateful for the heads up, but I just want to state that I'd like to have a conversation and I'd like to meet with some people and I'd like to see, you know, what are all the solutions? Looking at the situation, if this is the situation, what we need to have a conversation. It's a little more than standing here at the meeting.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, do we need a motion to form a committee? But
I mean, is that where I would want to go? Maybe it's question one.
Yeah, the question one is, do you want a committee style, administrative arm to deal with this? Or do you want to assign, commissioners as liaisons? And I recommend 2, not just 1, to deal with this. And it's going to probably require in the field meetings as well, out at Flying Hills. But not to mince words, Flying Hills is the problem. The way Flying Hills was allowed to develop, with no space between the cars, with these little tiny closets, trash closets, over in Muirfield in particular, I'm familiar with those. The gates. We regularly have complaints from residents who, they don't want the trash guys to come in their gate, but that's where they're supposed to get your trash. They break my lock, but you're not supposed to lock it because they're trying to get their trash. So there are some real problems. But I think we should talk to some representatives of at least 1 or 2 of the haulers, because things like, let's take the trash rooms on Fairway. Yes, you can fit toters in there. Are they even going to pull the toters out? I don't know.
yeah, we need to have a conversation.
Yeah, there needs to be some,
It's a little more than this.
it's very complicated because of all the different methods of trash collection in Flying Hill.
I think one of my questions then is, and more so for the public, for the people who don't live in Flying Hills, is to describe all the different levels of what you have down there, from private residence to rental properties.
Rental properties
We
are
have
not.
Flying Hills Apartment Company, but we take care of our own trash at Flying Hills Apartment
Okay.
Company. Flying
So
Hills
that's
Truck,
some of that, I think, gonna be some of the deciding factor here, because we have other big areas in the township and apartment complexes that are units that style that have their own collection via dumpster or something else, which again, like that's something I think people understand. I think you say, okay, there's 20% of Flying Hills, but yes, some of that's going from single family residential to condo style and like an apartment style thing.
we
which
have apartment.
I'm not against, you know what I mean, like, and again, this comes up on the fire side a lot, that's why. Sort of asking for you to explain it so everyone understands, this isn't just a matter of pulling up on. One of the streets as a single family residence where they put out normal trash cans, this is. A greater issue, and then depending how they come up with the solutions for it, there may be some things on the fire side that we're gonna wanna look at because of where you're storing it, how you're storing it. For safety
Oh,
purposes.
absolutely, absolutely. And really, with the singles, this wouldn't be an issue, because with our single houses, you're gonna be able to service them just like you're stating. That's not, it's more the townhouses, the condos. Really stacked townhouses and condos. That's what we're talking about, 3 types of housing. Singles will be fine, apartments, Flying Hills Apartment Company pays for that trash removal, so that's not even part of that. So it's 3 types of housing really. And, you know, if we could have that discussion, and obviously we need input because of the fire hazard.
I think like you said, like, this is not a discussion we can
Right.
get further here. So
Well, I just want to understand the committee idea. So who would sit on this committee? Is this the commissioner?
That's up
on
to
it,
the
or-
board. I would suggest realistically, I would need to be involved simply because I have an intimate knowledge of the bid specifications. I would strongly urge commissioners to be involved. Because eventually this is going to boil down to an authorization to issue bid specifications. And the next contract is going to be based on those bid specifications. So commissioners should be involved.
Can you please tell me, when do those bid specifications have to be put together?
The current contract is for 2024, 2025, and 2026. So by the summer of 2026, before the contract ends,
Okay,
we need to send out the
So
bid
we-
specs, so we
okay.
know how to budget for 2027.
I just wanted to have my time parameter in my head. Okay, got it. What?
There's time, but not a lot of
Yeah,
time.
there's time, but we
These
need to
are
start talking
thorny
now.
issues. These
We
are
need-
thorny issues.
Yeah, we need to start, yes, it is.
No, this is still in the formative stages, but I was just talking to some folks from my missing the other day, and they're in the process of forming an environmental committee as to which their will be as part of this. So they're moving their trash collection into an environmental committee. And as part of forming this environmental committee, it opens their ability to get certain grant funding. I don't know all the details on this. They're literally in process of doing this right now. But if you're gonna go into a committee route, maybe you kind of mirror what they're doing. If it gives us the opportunity to apply for other grants that we wouldn't otherwise be eligible for. I can find out more details on it.
That sounds great, and I like the idea of broadening the scope, so it's not just like a very narrow, focused thing, we think efficient, effective use of people's time.
I would make one observation. The township used to have an EAC, Environmental Advisory Council. Their goal was a revision to the zoning ordinance. Once they got that revision to the zoning ordinance, we never made a forum again. So they got something they wanted and they were gone. So my caution is any of these types of committees need to have a broader mandate. That's just what I would say it about, and any kind of environmental committee, whether you call it an EAC, Environmental Advisory Council, or whatever role you give them. If the people involved are only interested in one thing, they may evaporate after that one thing happens.
Is that something, I mean, I know you're pretty closely involved with Berks Nature, do you think that's something like they might lean into?
They're a mixed group, not just from Cumru Township. They will certainly, I'm sure they will certainly come. So for instance, the Angelica Creek Watershed Association, and I'm a municipal representative on there. There are people from Cumru Township and as the secretary, the chair, and of course Larry Lloyd at Berks Nature is a representative, as a resident of Cumru Township as well. So there's a lot of Cumru Township running around at Berks Nature, and they would certainly assist. But where I'm going is that some of this stuff is not fun stuff. It's not fun for any of us sitting here listening to us talk about how trash cans get picked up. This is not fun stuff. It's not, as a lot of times they would say, sexy stuff to be talking about trash cans and what type of trash cans and what type of trash truck. But whomever you appoint on this committee and whatever title you give them, they need to be people who are willing to get into some very boring detail. Yeah, there needs to be some time devoted to it, yes.
Does this even have to involve the township, since the apartments have their own trash collector? Okay. Why can't and offices have to like set up some kind of trash?
Set up some kind of trash collection.
And that is definitely one option, is if Flying Hills takes over all the trash collection for all of Flying Hills. What will and that's fine, but what will have to happen is the township will have to adopt new ordinances, because right now, the way the ordinance that governs trash collection is written is that except for commercial apartment complexes, everyone else has to be inside our trash collection contract. So we would need, and that's not an impossible thing, but it is something administratively that would need to happen. The other thing that would need to happen is that if you all who live in Flying Hills knows, Flying Hills trash day is on a Friday. So what would happen is if that day was freed up, so to speak, under the rest of the township's trash contract, we would distribute the collection of the other areas differently than we do now. And that would take some time to map out. That would actually be helpful because automated collection, it may be automated, but it's not necessarily fast. There are some great videos on YouTube of how this automated collection works. I would encourage everybody to watch a couple of those, but sometimes it's faster to have the guy jump off the back of the truck and sling your bags into the back of the trash truck. The automated collection occurs on a very regular basis, but it's slower. And there are some very rural areas of the township that the west and southwest side of the township might take longer for trash collection. But so if Flying Hills was cut out of the loop, so to speak, I know that's not exactly the greatest phrase right now, but Flying Hills is cut out of the contract, then the rest of the township would be distributed across differently to give the time for the automated.
How do we need to proceed?
You need to decide if you want, one, if you want a committee, two, do you want liaisons, or three, do you want to kick this to the July meeting and think about those two options and bring it up again at the July meeting.
I'm inclined to go with 3. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
For the July meeting.
And I'll go for July.
That sounds good. We can get.
But this will occur on your agenda in July, so I would ask the board to think about how administratively you want to approach this issue. And so that certainly if you're assigning liaisons, we determine who that is, and obviously Alicia will have something to say about that. And also, if you're gonna have a committee, what you want that committee to look like. Initially forming a committee is a lot of legwork. It certainly can be done. I'm not discouraging that. I'm just saying that you need to tell us in July how you want us to begin to address this issue. And there will be meetings, if we have a committee or liaison, there will probably be meetings on site at Flying Hills, so you can take a look at these different methods of collection, because both of you gentlemen live in single, and then Dave lives in an apartment. So you'd have to look at what the conditions are on the ground.
I just want to say thanks for giving me the heads up, and we'll discuss this next month, okay?
Okay, I guess we have an executive session.
Kelsey, do you want to talk about what you've developed so far, or do you want to, is that more still in the formative stages?
I'm still waiting on Nick to get all the exhibits together, so I think we could probably table it till July.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought.
And that was the only thing. There's nothing else.
Correct.
Okay. All right, excellent. So then I guess we'll get into the reminders. So the reminders, there's a zoning hearing board meeting on the 25th of June, 6 o'clock. There is an application that's already on there. Board of Commissioners meeting in July, 2 of them, one on July 16, and the other one on July 30, both at 7 o'clock. Planning Commission, July 8 at 6 p.m. And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll
second the motion.
And the township offices are closed
Tomorrow. Oh, thank you. Let's.
Great job, Nate. Thanks. You did it like a pro. I didn't even work.
All right, so tell me what we're doing.
We're just gonna